Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. And as most or if not all of you know, there was a debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris on Tuesday night, and that was, obviously very important. A lot of people tuned in, a lot more people than the first debate between Trump and Biden. And there has been a lot of noise and a lot of stuff coming out of it on both ends. Republicans are going to say they won, Democrats are going to say they won. There's also a lot of other things that I want to get into besides that, because there's a lot of other things that are going on behind closed doors that nobody really talks about as much. And that would include some registration and early voting data, which is maybe even more important than the debate. But back to the debate, first of all, we have received a little bit of polling from it. And in my personal opinion, I do think the debate was kind of a wash. And what I mean by that is I don't think it's going to make a difference really at all. I think maybe half a point in Harris's favor. There had been a few polls released prior, which are all of these ones here. In this one, in Rasmussen, Trump gained a point. New York Post, Trump also gained a point. And then these other two, Harris gained a point from those. So him gaining a point in these two and her gaining a point in these two, which would basically signify to me that it's not going to make too much of a difference anyways. I think with these debates, if they're kind of end up like this, where Republicans are going to say they won, Democrats are going to say they won, and the consensus kind of becomes that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Obviously, debates are important, but this one especially, I think it's just going to be forgotten. Most people already made up their minds. I don't think there's too many undecideds that are going to really swing the election too much. But I do think from this, in the popular vote, it won't make too much of a net gain for her on the Electoral College because it works differently. But I think on the popular vote, she probably maybe have gained like half a point from that as of now. And this race is already extremely close. So she's up by 1.5%, which is down from what she was in her high peak of around like 2. And going back in history, I just want to compare this real quick. We had Biden plus 7.8 in September 12, 2020. And that's why I'm very skeptical of this number being that accurate, is because of how inaccurate it was in 2020. In 2016 was a little more accurate. This would end up being the most accurate time for the polls. In the later month or two, this would go up to about Clinton plus 4. So ended up overestimating her by 2. But I would take that also with a grain of salt and just look at it really in the terms of what I want to go over now is going to be, these registration numbers. But first, there has obviously I highlighted some of this debate stuff. On the CNN exit poll, they said Harris won the debate, I think around 63 to 37. And, we would expect that from CNN because Trump always loses all of their snap polls from debates, apart from the one with Biden just recently. On Reuters, 60% said they are now voting for Trump. So this is one of those post polls that have been conducted where they had 10 people were interviewed, how CNN does it also. And they did say that this ended up favoring Trump. So it's really weird. Have some data pointing Harris won, some data pointing Trump won. And that's why I think right now that this debate isn't going to make much of a difference at all. And people on both sides are going to, tell me either way, Trump won this, that badly, destroyed her, Harris destroyed him, and this and that. And for me, the unbiased perspective that I have to take on this to be able to predict a map, very objectively, would be that the debate did not make much of a difference. And if it made a little bit of a difference, it probably benefited Kamala by a slight amount. But I think that, it won't even change that much at all. Trump did well in the end, I think, where he hit back on her by saying that, she hasn't done it already. She sounded, pretty strong most of the debate, even though most of what she was saying was, just a lot of emotion, and that appeals to a lot of people. Trump sounded off in some moments. Some moments he sounded, he got that Trump vibe. He's Trump. Trump is Trump. So nobody would expect anything else of him but, what he is. But I want to get to this voter registration data for August, because we finally got the voter registration for August. And this contradicts a lot of people saying that Kamala Harris is doing a lot better than Biden, because if she was, then the voter registrations would be favoring them, or that would be the most common sense thing to think. But that has not happened at all. Republicans, once again, another month, August, we went over July already. And in the month of August, it's the same kind of thing where Republicans are gaining more than double the amount. And the only state where Democrats are really gaining, the state of Colorado, where Democrats ended up gaining double. But in the states that matter, we have Florida, where Republicans almost gained double. Iowa, it's not even a swing state anymore. We have the state of Nevada, where both of them lost because the government ended up removing a lot of people that are, not even voter eligible anymore. They removed them from the rolls, so that's why it looks like this. But Democrats lost a lot more than Republicans. And keep in mind, Nevada is not a big state. We have New Mexico, which is just about tied. North Carolina, a state to really pay attention to, Republicans gained double. In Pennsylvania, another month where Republicans have gained almost double than Democrats. And that's all the states that we really could track based on this. But that's going to be the voter registration, and that contradicts a lot of some of these polls that do have her gaining on Biden, because Republicans are still gaining in those registrations. And these are raw numbers. These are small samples of only in the thousands. These are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. A last thing to point out before we get to the map is the fact that Republicans have been gaining a lot in the early mail-in data. And this is specifically in Duval County, which is where Jacksonville is in Florida. And Duval County had been shifting left for a while, but it seems like it's shifting right now, which is, a sign for the rest of the state that it's going to get shifted heavily to the right. Republicans have shifted it 11.5 percentage points in the early vote data, and this always favors Democrats. They are up 7, and, Democrats and other are down a good amount as well. As we can see here, it's a similar story statewide. And this is also very bad for Democrats in the state of Florida. But either way, I want to get to this map now. And I want to fill out this map between Trump and Harris. And we definitely have talked we spent a lot of time talking about some of the background. So this is definitely going to put me now into my prediction. And we are, September 12th. So the election is in less than 2 months. Trump's going to win all these safe states by the, similar margins as I've always had them. 12 percentage points or over. All these states are going to go to him by 12 and over. These are not going to be really talked about too much. It does include Ohio and Iowa, which are going to be in that safe column. And then for Democrats, they'll have all of these states 12 and over as well. Do expect the state of New Jersey to get closer, but not that close to be put into that likely column as of now. But moving very quickly into that 6 to 12 point range, Republicans, Texas, and Florida, as usual, as in all my predictions now, especially after looking at those numbers out of Florida. We could expect the same from Texas. Those Hispanic trends are pretty universal among this part of the country. I do expect Hispanics to trend Republican out here in the West as well, but they do behave a lot different than the Hispanic groups over here, especially along the Rio Grande Valley and in Florida itself. But Republicans are at 218 with the likely states. Democrats will have the state of Colorado in the likely column. And I also forgot Maine's 2nd district will be in that likely column for Republicans. It'll just be under that 12-point margin because I don't think, the state of Maine is Republican enough to vote for Donald Trump. With Biden, maybe I could have put Maine 2nd in that safe column. But for now, we're leaving it in that likely column. And then some more likely states for Kamala Harris. It'll just be the state of New Mexico. This will go to her by just over 6 percentage points. And the rest of these states are all going to be under 6. In the state of Nevada, I do expect Trump to win, especially with those voter registration numbers that I just showed you guys in Nevada, where the lead has been cut to almost nothing in the state of Nevada. And, Biden only won the state by around 30,000 votes. So the registration being cut by, I think, 80,000 in 2020 to now it's only 20,000. So that right there is some good numbers for them. And the polls in the state of Nevada are really close, and as well, all of them. As you can see here, all the 7 states, these margins are just so tight. It's very hard to predict the winner in any of them. But in the state of Nevada, the most recent one had Trump up. The previous 4 had Harris up, and she leads by 0.6 percentage points on average in Nevada in those polls. I do think Trump's going to come out on top, and I do think he's also going to come out on top narrowly in the state of Arizona. But by now, I do think Arizona is voting to the right of Nevada. Arizona's numbers and registration has also been looking very good. He's also doing very good in the polls. He does lead by 1.6. Very different from Biden leading by 5 in 2020. I do think he's going to win the state of Arizona as of now, as well as the state of Georgia. Right now, Georgia is going to be also in that tilt column. The polls in Georgia have been probably one of the most narrow, where Harris had been leading the previous three, but then Quinnipiac, usually you would expect Quinnipiac to have her up since it's such a liberal leaning pollster. It did have Trump up by 3, and this is one of those states where the polls are one of the most accurate out of all of them. Trump is up right now by 0.3, so that can definitely signify that it is going to be a very close race and one to watch out for. Right now, I'm putting Georgia in that tilt column. The state of North Carolina is still going to be in that lean column. I think he's going to win it by around 2. The polls are underestimating him, in my opinion. She leads a couple. He leads, the rest of them by narrow margins. He ends up leading by 0.1. And the state of North Carolina is one of those states where we do have some early voting that has come out. And I did make a short about it that you guys can check out after watching this video. And in that short, I did say that in the state of North Carolina, the racial breakdown of the early votes right now, who's ordering those ballots, is much more white than in 2020. And whites in 2020 in North Carolina voted around, I think, over 60 and less than 40 for Trump. So the fact that they're voting maybe like 65 to 35 or 60 to 40, something like that for Trump, indicates that he's going to win the state by a larger margin if those demographic groups vote accordingly. And we do get polls showing that he is gaining actually with blacks and Hispanics. So it's something to keep an eye out for. This is one of those states where he is going to be underestimated, in my opinion, and he's going to win by over 2 percentage points. Vice versa in the state of Virginia. In the state of Virginia, we do have Harris leading right now by around 3 to 4. Maybe up to 5, but the reason why I wouldn't put it at 5 right now is because unlike some other states where she has been gaining in the polls, in the state of Virginia, it has remained tight. There had been a recent poll that came out that had her up by 8. The previous ones had her up by around 3. I think it was 3 in a row that had her up by 3. But besides that, Virginia is a state that has been moving to the left. I think it's halted right now. I think Democrats have maxed out a lot in these suburban areas up here in the DC area, as well as down in Richmond and in Norfolk, Virginia Beach down here. And I think it's going to go back to the right a little bit, but not by too much, enough to put it in that lean column. And I want to leave the Rust Belt for last and go over to Nebraska's second, where I do have Harris winning by a lean margin. Going to be in that middle range, I think around 2 to 4. This is a very heavily left trending district. It was redistricted to be a tiny bit more Republican. I do not think it's going to make much of a difference. I think it's going to continue to shift left, compared to the nation. So it's going to stay in that Democrat column. The states of New Hampshire and Maine at large are going to vote in tandem with each other, as well as the state of Minnesota. These states are going to vote in tandem with each other, and I expect them to vote in similar margins, all of them between 2 and 6 points for Harris. Probably, I would predict maybe 3 to 5, most of them in that range. They voted pretty similar in 2020. Pretty similar also in 2016. I expect them all to vote pretty similar this time around, especially, since Tim Walz is from Minnesota, so that'll keep that margin from going under 2. And in the states of New Hampshire and Maine at large, they do not like Republicans as much as, these other states. It'll keep them from going too much to the right, especially because Donald Trump is not too popular around here in the Northeast. But we do have to wait and see. We had some interesting polling coming out of the Mid-Atlantic region, so we don't really know exactly. And then finally, to cap it off, we have the 3 Rust Belt states. The state of Wisconsin, right now I have it going for Trump. We're very used to these polls that are horrible in Wisconsin, where Democrats are overestimated by upwards of 6 points, maybe even 7 at some point. In this time in history, 2020 and 2016, Biden and Clinton were overestimated by huge amounts. It seems like the same thing is going to happen again. I do predict that Trump's going to win the state by a tilt margin around less than 1% right now. And these polls are going to end up being wrong, especially this one. This definitely tips the margin a lot. This one that has her up by 8 by Bloomberg. This is definitely way off from, what's really going on. Another reason to prove my point on that is because Michigan is half that margin. She leads Michigan by 0.9, but Wisconsin by 1.8. And that proves my point that Wisconsin polls are atrocious. I do think she's going to actually win the state of Michigan right now, and Trump will win the state of Wisconsin. That's complete opposite of the polls, because the polls are not everything. The polls are not accurate, especially in these 3 states. And Michigan is a lot more Democrat leaning than the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin went to Biden by 0.6 and he won Michigan by almost 3. So just put that in perspective and take a grain of salt when you're looking at these polls before making a judgment just based on them. Also, the demographic data is a lot better in the state of Wisconsin for Republicans. So he does hold an edge there, while she does hold an edge right now in the state of Michigan. And then finally, I always like leaving the state for last because I think it is the most important. The state of Pennsylvania, I do have as tilting in Trump's column. And that's the same as before. It hasn't changed much. There also hasn't been too much polling that came out. There had been one that came out post-debate, I think today or yesterday, and it had Trump up. So, but it hasn't been added to RCP just yet. Either way, it's a tie right now in the race. And usually, once again, Democrats are always overestimated in those presidential elections, the past 2 against Trump, by pretty large margins to say the least. And I think the data, especially in Pennsylvania, also early data we did have come out, and it is looking much better for Republicans than in 2020. I think Joe Biden was very special for the state because of his appeal to the eastern part. He is from Lackawanna County, where Scranton is, so he did have an appeal to eastern Pennsylvania, which swung the state enough to make him win by a point. But Kamala, being from California, not being a Midwesterner, not having any appeal whatsoever in the Midwest, will definitely haunt her there. But either way, that's going to be the map. We have 297 to 241. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and check out other my content. Put all your comments and suggestions in the comment section below, and I'll check you guys out in the next one.